Hi, this is Chaplain Tyler, and you're watching this video and you got this with Tyler. There are certain events that happen in a person's life that become definitive. They really go into the person and cause them to question what is reality, what is the nature of what we perceive. Is reality nothing more than what we can expect to feel, touch, or sense with our five senses? Or is there something more? And I want to relate one of those instances where I came to realize that there is more to this reality than what I can use my senses to discover. It happened in the context where it was just before I became a chaplain, and I was working in a church as a pastoral care person. And it was a Sunday morning that this started. And I happened to be in the office during the service, and the phone rang. And it turned out, and so I'm like, okay, that's unusual. And so I answered the phone, and it turned out to be a former member of the college and career group that was at the church that I knew, who had moved to a different city, and she was in distress. She was in a place of psychological and mental and emotional and spiritual anguish, and she was just beside herself. She could not cope anymore with the feelings that were coming up and the trauma that she had been working on and trying to work through for decades. The issue was that the unforgiveness and the bitterness and the anger that she felt towards her grandfather, who had abused her for years, and the anger and bitterness she felt towards her parents and her the greater extended family for covering it up and not wanting the truth to get out for fear of what it would do to the family's reputation. It was eating her alive, and she had tried for years to forgive and had not been able to. And I don't blame her. I can't even imagine. It is brutal. But she had reached a point where she knew she needed to forgive because there was no other way. And she discovered, to her chagrin, that she couldn't forgive, that she lacked something within her to be able to forgive. And she was calling the church to see if there was somebody that could help her, because she knew us, help her with this. Well, I had a little bit of an idea, a little bit of knowledge on how to move through forgiveness. It is not easy, but I decided that I asked her if it was okay if I tried to help her a little bit. She said, absolutely. So we ended up talking, and I wanted to move out of the general office where anybody could come in and go to my little office on the side. So I put the phone on hold and then went over to my office and went in and started talking with her. And I explained that I had learned that forgiveness is not something that I can do on my own. It's something that has to happen it's like I have to let go of the hurt, but I never really understood where I was letting it go to. It just doesn't go to a void. It just doesn't happen that way. I learned that forgiveness has to be given to something. And in my case, being Christian, it has to go to God. That's one of the reasons that Jesus came, is so that we can give our hurts and our cares and our concerns to Him. And the deep hurts He has already taken upon Himself. Those are my beliefs. And whether or not you agree or not is not, that's just my belief. So I helped her. It took quite a bit of time for her. What we need to do in forgiveness is that we have to be willing to give up the hurt to Him. It doesn't mean we're excusing the behavior. It doesn't mean that justice doesn't need to be done. It doesn't mean that the person is right, or that we're giving up our right to protect ourselves. In fact, I think that's one of the abuses that has happened in the past with people, is that they forgive without there being any kind of justice done. And they're just told to forgive when it's not safe for them to do so. In this case, the young woman was long out of the home in a totally different country. And so there was no danger of that. The safety factor was not an issue. So I finally let her know that ultimately that's the decision. She doesn't need to hold it in her heart anymore. And she can choose to give the hurt to God. God is the one who does the work in the heart. I think that's a missing piece for a lot of people in forgiveness. Anyways, so I said, is it okay if we pray? And so I prayed and led a prayer regarding the need that she has identified, that she knows she needs to forgive, but she can't, and that's okay, and that's why, God, you're there, so that we can give it to you so you can forgive and change our hearts. And I asked her in the prayer, are you willing to let go of the hurt? And it was extremely hard for her to do, but she knew she had to. Again, it was ruining her life. She could not cope. She could not finish school that she was in. She could not work at a job. She just was at wit's end. So she finally, probably very reluctantly, said, yes, I choose to give it to God. And it was a wonderful moment. And we a couple minutes later, and I asked God to fill that part of her heart, so that she would not have to worry about the anger and the bitterness, and that whenever it would resurface, because it would, that she wouldn't believe that it was coming back. It was just something that had been a habit that it had been taken and given to God, and now it needed to be worked out, and that the time for changing of the heart had occurred. So we finished the prayer, and within about 30 seconds after the prayer was finished, a sound came into the phone that I can't describe. It was a loud electronic screeching noise that went on and on and on, and it drowned out any words that we were saying. It was so loud, I had to take the receiver, this is an old landline, I had to take the receiver away from my head and hold it out. And it was brutal. It went on and on and on, and finally I had to just hang up the phone. The young woman called back, and she heard the sound too. It was at both ends. And we talked about it, and I asked her how she was feeling. She says, a whole lot lighter. There's something that was released. And I said, do you think that there was some type of unclean or evil spirit that had attached itself to the unforgiveness you had, and that when you chose to forgive, you got rid of that structure in your heart, and that spirit or demon or whatever it was left you and went into the phone line? She thought that made perfect sense. And so we prayed, just a brief protection, and we went on with our day. And she, I hope that she has done really well. That's only a starting place when somebody's is trying to process deep hurts like abuse. But hopefully that's okay. Hopefully she's doing great. Now, at the time, I was holding a job where I was doing some long-haul truck driving, delivering fuel all around Western Canada. And that afternoon, I got in the truck and was going up north, northwest, and about 6.5 hours into the trip, it's nighttime, and no, it's not quite nighttime because it was summer. Well, nighttime, yes, but it wasn't dark. I could still see. It was just before dusk, and I know exactly in the road where I was and what highway and everything, because it was this is where it got really weird. And I was I was listening to some music, and suddenly I knew I wasn't alone in the truck. I don't know how I knew, but I knew. And on the passenger seat, with my peripheral vision, not with my direct vision, but with my peripheral vision, suddenly I was able to see this black, bubbling, humanoid shape sitting on the passenger seat. I froze for a second, and the evil that was coming from that thing, it's like if you took boiling, bubbling oil and put it onto a vaguely humanoid form. That's all. And I suddenly had the idea, or suddenly knew, that this was the same entity or demon or spirit or whatever you want to call it that had come out of that young woman. And it took the spiritual attachment that was there because of the prayer that I did with the young woman. It took that and followed it back to me. Well, obviously I'm scared out of my mind, and all I can do is pray. And so I pray. And I pray protection, and I let that thing know in no uncertain terms that I am covered by the blood of Jesus, and that I am a child of God's, and that thing has no access to me, and it will not have any access to anyone else of my friends or family, period. And I said, you have no power here. And I went back to my music and paid no attention to it. Well, it stayed there for a while. I don't know how long, a few minutes probably. And I was aware of it. Again, I could see it with my peripheral vision. I couldn't see it directly, but I could see it with my peripheral vision. And I just ignored it. And after a little while, it just poof, went away. And this taught me a lot. It taught me that there are things that exist that can bind themselves within us or to things or objects or places. A lot of sanctification and things like that. And yet this old hurt was providing a structure for something to bind itself to. And I also learned you need to take the structure away, and you don't need to look at, well, there are times and places, but in this case, we didn't know there was something there. We only knew that there was an unforgiveness. So we dealt with the unforgiveness, and that was enough to get rid of the demon. And what I needed to do is protect myself in prayer better, to ask God to hide me in Him. I have felt evil since that time in different places and different things. I have sensed evil in different places before that. But that was such a, it was such a, how do I even say this? It was such a real event outside the norm of what I had experienced that I will never forget. Now, it isn't the first time that I have seen a demon. That was the second. The first time was really disheartening, and I had forgotten about it until I started thinking about this series and this video in particular. But I will tell you about the first time I did. And again, whether or not you believe this is totally up to you. Whether or not you believe me is also totally up to you. I have no reason to lie. I have everything to lose by saying something like this. But this is a reality of an experience that I had that was different. It was separate. It was almost unexplainable. And in talking with people, as I was a chaplain and moving and talking with people in churches, I am not alone in having had experiences of this nature. Most people who have experiences like this, they don't want to talk about it, or they don't want to be seen as they don't want to be seen as somebody outside the norm of good Christian theology. And I believe that's one of the reasons that so many people in the church now, or so many people have left the church and have looked for explanations and validations of their experiences outside the church. How many people left the church and went into the New Age movement? How many people went out of the church and went into other types of spiritual practices because their reality was different than what the church allowed them to be? So I give that to you to think about. It is one of my passions to see people validated for who they are, how God made them, and I hope, and it is my profound hope, that one day people will be more accepting that there are individuals who have different experiences, and that is a reality for them. And it doesn't mean just because you haven't experienced it that it isn't real. So I give that to you to think about. In any case, that's enough of me. I look forward to sharing the next video with you, which will be the first time I ever saw a demon. And that one was also quite shocking to me. This is Chaplain Tyler, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. May you be blessed. Remember, I see you, I believe in you, and you got this. Take care.